So as they say, no good deed goes unpunished. I presented the thought of, hey, you know, what about a college towns community? There's so many of us in this unique position with college towns, big and small, that have unique challenges outside of other spaces without college communities. So I presented the idea, and in true form and fashion, they said, that's great, go ahead and figure it out. So that's what we're here today to do. So as I think most of you know, we've oriented a lot of our discussions along Sports CTA through communities, and we've developed different like-minded communities to come together to share best practices, create new opportunities and ideas, generate opportunities in each of our markets, and then also serve as a conduit both upwards towards the association with communication on what's going on in those specific markets, but then also downstream so we can share information that may be relevant or pertinent in those different communities. And so what's very unique about this idea of a college town community, if you will, is it touches big and small communities. You know, we've got a SMID market for our small and medium-sized markets. There's a large sports commission a group that meets. You know, there's the young peer group. There's a state group. But what's really special about this is just the fact that we're all very diverse in what we offer. And the college town concept can be for large Big Ten schools like Michigan State University, where I'm home to. And we've got a Division III school in our community, Olivet College, that we partner with and work very closely with as well. And they are about 30 minutes outside of town in a very small community. So it really kind of translates across the board. So the thought process being that if we can kind of come together, maybe we can work to tackle some issues and concerns that we all have in each other's, excuse me, not in each other's, but in our own communities, and maybe share some best practices as we navigate through that. I know we all do that one-on-one. You know, I've checked with Chad before about college problems in our town, Linda Logan. I think we all have these discussions off and on, one-on-one about, you know, how are you managing this? What do you do in this situation? Do you book anything on home football weekends in certain size communities because can you even get inventory? If not, how do you navigate that if the schedule's not out early enough? There's a lot of unique challenges that I think come with the college experience. Getting access to the facilities at the university, developing relationships and how best to do that. How do you work with your college or university in that community? Leading the bid process, whether it be an NJCAA, an NCAA school, an NAI school, how do you navigate that? What's your role and your activity in that space versus the colleges? And I think we're all different and unique in those spaces as well. So really what we want to do today is just explore the opportunity to create this community and figure out if we want to move it forward. And so it's an open dialogue. We can share ideas here of topics that may be relevant and pertinent. We can discuss, you know, getting together and meeting, what's ideal. Do we want to do this once a month, once a quarter? What does that maybe look like? And really just kind of talk through this a little bit. It may be a very quick conversation. It may be a very long conversation. We have an hour blocked. We can take all that time, or if we get through things in 15, 20 minutes and we feel we want to move things forward, then we can kind of go from there as well. I will be taking some notes as we go along, so I will be listening. If I'm not looking, please just keep talking. I just want to make sure that we capture the conversation and I can bring that back. As we develop this community out, I'm assuming that we'll probably want to move it forward. I'll probably ask one or two people to join me as co-partners in just moving this community forward. And as it moves forward, we'll probably rotate people through leading that and generating topics and creating ideas for us. So just know that moving forward. But I guess I would throw it open to just any questions or comments off the bat as to whether or not we believe this would be a valuable space for us to carve out community time amongst our industry and figure out where to go from here. And don't be shy. I know nobody in this industry is, so.
My immediate comment is...
Could use a mic, it's being recorded. Sorry. Thank you.
My immediate comment, Mike, is I think obviously you have people that are interested in this topic. So I'm hoping that that something comes positive out of this, but I think just the fact that you have as many people as you do in here early on Thursday morning after a long week, really, I think that tells us that there's some interest. I think it's just a matter of getting everybody to participate and bring out their thoughts, because, you know, I could probably hand the mic to Joe and say, Joe, give us your first challenge with dealing with, you know, 3 universities or 2 universities in a JUCO in the same space in a relatively mid-sized town, and to be the capital of Tallahassee, and we got to deal with when sessions in and all those things. He's probably got an arm's length list of ideas that or challenges that he would probably love best practices from other organizations.
That's a great point, right?
So Mike, with that,
Not to be put on the spot or anything like that. Obviously, like Ray says, we're mid-market to small market. I mean, we're a little under 200,000 in population. I think that's including students. So, our big thing is football drives the needle. And so our biggest challenge, truthfully, is just losing the entire fall, not being able to plan out the fall until those football schedules drop. And so we have an HBCU in Florida A&M University, and they work with us a little bit more. They get flexibility in their scheduling and get to push it, whereas Florida State University is at the whim of the ACC, and they don't drop their schedule until end of January for the next season. So that's like our number one challenge, is just waiting on them to drop the dates of basketball schedules, football schedules, baseball schedules before we can move forward for an entire quarter of our year. So
Yeah, I think
that's the biggest one.
probably pretty relatable to most in this room, I imagine. Yeah.
No, I'm not singing this morning. Catch me at karaoke later, though. Good morning. Thank you for organizing this. It's something that I find challenging as well in my community. And similar to Joe, I have all 3 divisions of the NCAA. I have a JUCO, and I find it challenging to get them to understand the value of working with me and the value of allowing me to utilize their facilities to bring in sports tourism. And so, I'll hear through the grapevine, oh, the Atlantic 10 and VCU they're hosting the outdoor track and field championship. And then I have to email the AD at VCU like, hey, dude, why didn't you tap me for this? And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot. But if it's, the A10 basketball championship, the men's basketball championship, he wants me to help get letters from the mayor and help with hotels. So it's like, be consistent throughout all sports. Don't only call on me when you want help with your high profile events. So I would love to meet at least, once a quarter. I know we're all busy, but I think if we can convene maybe once a quarter and just share ideas and best practices and challenges, I would find it extremely valuable.
And I think what would be unique about this opportunity, Kendra's got one too. What would be unique about this community as well is we can leverage the assets and the resources and the reach of Sports ETA and bring in relevant topic speakers to us once in a while as well to maybe share how we can do this a little bit better in some of our communities and how we can grow that relationship a little bit better. Bringing an NCAA rep to speak to us a little bit about some of this stuff. Maybe bring in one of our colleges representatives that have a really good relationship with their sports commission, talk about how do you drive value both ways, because it needs to be that two-way street, right? Both ways. It's a partnership. Everybody benefits from it, but partnerships only work when both sides are in at an equal amount. So, I think we can bring some resources from Sports ETA into this community to maybe help elevate all of us. Kendra?
Yeah, I was just going to speak to both of you guys, or to the topic, I guess. So at A&M, it took us a while. We had to build those relationships, and it was constantly going to meetings, trying to get them to understand what was going on, all that good stuff. It took a long time to get it built, but now, after doing that, we actually put one of them on our board from the athletic department, and so we were able to, he could hear what was going on and what's happening in the community, and there's a lot of talk. A&M is not, surprise, A&M is not as community connected as we would all hope that they would be, so we're working on that right now with them too. But what we did is he calls us now, and he tells us, hey, here's the events. He bids on all the NCAA events when that comes open. We don't do that. He does that, and then we just help him with hotels. We help him with all the other pieces of it, but he takes care of that. And then also when it comes to the football schedule coming out late, we call and ask, hey, do you know, can you give me a heads up of what it's going to look like when it's coming out? And that way we know where we can put events before the schedule's ever out. And our hotels have gotten kind of accustomed to knowing that we're going to know. We're not going to tell you what the schedule is, but we can tell you there won't be a football game on that day that we're calling about. So that's kind of the way we've been doing that and just trying to continue to build that relationship. But once we got them involved on our board level, that's when they kind of started coming in. And we started with their facilities guy out of athletics, is who was on our board. And then after that, we moved on to the special events guy. And so he was on our board, and he's the one that we really have the bigger connection with because he was able to tell us, when things were going to happen. But it takes a little while. I mean, it's just like what we do here, building those relationships that we're trying to build. It was exactly the same thing. So, and I'm happy, like maybe we could get him to come and speak and be on a panel or whatever. Oh, sorry. I have to say Ashley.
Good morning, everyone. Wes Ray, visit Stockton, California, home of the University of the Pacific. As was just mentioned, we actually have an associate director of athletics that sits on our board of directors, and that's been highly helpful in just navigating and making things happen. We've actually, for the past 10 years, we've always led the applications to NCAA. We take the lead on all of that. We actually do most of the work, honestly. They don't have the staffing to do a lot of that, especially right now. They're really hurting. So actually, one of my team members had to go score a golf tournament last weekend and got paid by the university because they're so short-staffed. I took her from the university so that she already had a relationship with them. But so it's been a great relationship for us, other than the fact that we'd like to see more participation from their side, but we do definitely have them have a seat at the table. And I think that's highly valuable to do that. And I think that would be helpful to this group is to have someone from the collegiate athletics side that works successfully with their destination to come in and share about how to get in, because there are silos in universities and athletics is one of those. And I think it's once you're in there, though, I think we feel it's a very valuable relationship.
Yeah, I think that could be one of our first sessions off the bat is bringing together just a panel to talk about how best to engage in that space.
So I worked on both sides of the house. I started in college athletics and heard firsthand from the operations facilities people that they hated having the athletic director come to them and say, you have to do. And they had no say in the matter. So I encourage everybody, when I got to Durham and was working with Duke and NC Central, I went directly to the facility directors and to the marketing department to say, hey, how can we get you involved? What does this look like? We're doing X, Y, and Z. And it went a really long way. Even with people on the board, they better understood like the operations of the events, and they understood what we were asking because they constantly run events. So they knew if it was feasible or not. The athletic director often is just like, yeah, we could totally do that. Or no, we can't at all. But the operations guys, like that would be super helpful. And then if you get ticketing or marketing or you have that contact, often they'll come to the table and say, well, if you can throw in this part of it, we can actually sweeten the pot because you can do a ticket buy attached to a football game if you have the inventory, or a field hockey match or whatever it may be. One of the things that I would like to maybe explore a little bit more is getting the engagement from like the student athlete side of the house with events. I know that that's like on a sport by sport basis with a lot of them, and I know universities differ in, do you get the community service hours? Is that a part of graduation? Central had that where you had to do so many hours, Duke didn't. But I think that that's another piece of like, how do you explain that? And then one step further, I think as you have change of leadership, especially young athletic directors that are going to be coming into the space after we get through COVID, and maybe haven't been exposed to what we do, how do we convey it in a very succinct manner when they're drinking from the fire hose?
Yeah, those are great topics. And what's interesting too is I don't think David Jarrett is David from Penn State here, Happy Valley? I don't think he is. I haven't seen him this week. David, their bureau has actually activated with NIL now active. One of the topics is how do you engage student athletes in your community and leverage that as an asset. They're doing some very unique things where they've started a branch of their bureau that focuses on connecting athletes at Penn State University with businesses in their community and bringing them together to generate that opportunity, which is pretty progressive. I think they're a small CVB. For them to do that is pretty progressive. And it's probably not the right fit for everybody, but having some of those conversations about what's working in those markets and how you activate that, I think would be fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm Joey from Eugene, so I've got the University of Oregon here. And for us, we've taken it one step further. We're very similar to everybody else. We've got the Associate Athletic Director of Facilities on our advisory council. But I think the big thing for us is just you don't stop there with your relationships. Go throughout the entire athletic department. So he's actually allowed us to do a biannual presentation to their entire coaching staff to show them who we are, what we do, how we can help. And for us, we really enjoy the opportunity to try to convince them to run their own recruiting tournaments or have their, if they can't specifically do it, have somebody closely affiliated, but them have that back end support so that we can still generate room nights that way, even though may not be getting actual NCAA events from that. And then the other thing too is I'm also on the board of the Oregon Club, which is the athletic fundraising department, booster club, I guess. So money that we raise goes to student athlete scholarships. Well, they have an actual liaison that gives them access to players and coaches for speaking events. And so I know if I ever need a player or a coach, instead of going to the athletic director of facilities, I can go to that person and just say, hey, I know this is outside of it. If it's not you, if it's somebody else in your department, can you help me out? And usually he can say, yeah, I'll grab you a student or I'll grab you a coach for this event.
So let's talk a little bit about the scope of this community. Do we want to focus on, just the larger NCAA focus? There's so many layers here, right? Of course. So, or do we want to have a more broad scope of view with this and include NAIA discussions, NAIA? There's the intramural side of things as well. There's a large reach here with this college town concept. We could get pretty thin pretty quickly, but it also might provide a lot of content and more reach for our membership to engage with as well. So, what are our thoughts and feelings on that? Broad, I heard broad. Broad. All right. Yep, that was easy. I like it.
Mike, if I wasn't here right now, I would be having breakfast with our AD. I have a scheduled breakfast every about 6 weeks with our university athletic director, and used to have one with our JUCO, but it's just changed hands, and we're setting that up. They're ex officios on our board of directors and have been for years. My staff looks like University of West Florida South. They're all UWF grad students and grads and stuff like that. So I think broad is great.
Good. Okay. Good. That was my opinion too. So glad we have alignment.
Although I don't have a college university in my current situation, when I lived in Tallahassee and ran theirs, as well as in Lexington, we had a variety of NAIA schools in Lexington or around Lexington, D3, and of course, University of Kentucky. And listen to everybody, we all automatically think about going to facilities because that's the number one person that we feel like is most important. But in talking to my facilities guy that was on my board at University of Kentucky, he said, reach out to the College of Admissions because you have these teams, these families that are going to be in their town. They would provide information. Of course, they want to get information out by the school. It wasn't so much as the larger school at the University of Kentucky, but the Division III or the NAIA school, anything that was going to be on their campus or close to their campus, we would have them come out there and offer up would you like to put a tent up at the soccer complex to promote that? So it's almost that, unilateral showing support for your community. And like we heard yesterday, return on investments or as return on inspirations. Everybody in this room is all about networking, no matter what level it is, if it's with cities, other sports commissions, whether it be rights holders or whether it be within your community. And I think don't forget that is part of the broad. How big is this? Is broad. That's a critical element because you get buy-in that way, then you got other avenues or other phone calls you can make whenever you do get a no. Maybe there's another way to skin this cat.
Yeah. I saw another. Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, just a quick comment working off of what you were saying. The new director of facilities at Mason, he approached me. He actually tracked me down. And he said that the AD wanted him to use tournaments, competitions as a recruiting tool. So that changes the whole paradigm. at the university, and will change hopefully my life. I'm crossing my fingers. There's an athletic department. There's also a recreation department. So they have to coordinate things in order for me to get a good chunk of facilities to do what I need to do. But so it's a whole different situation. And again, I'm crossing my fingers. And also they're going to be building new facilities pretty soon. So with that kind of mindset at the university, life's going to be a lot easier for me.
I'm in Mobile with the University of South Alabama, so that's a mid-major. I mean, when you go to Columbus at Ohio State and Texas A&M, of course, they can kind of do what they want. Whereas us in mid-major colleges, what we have found for years and years, we're building those relationships, which of course is what you have to do. But where I started getting a little bit of traction is when we started talking to them about bringing high school all-star events or high school championships to their campus, especially with South Alabama. They've gone on this building spree, so they have all these updated facilities. So it's sort of an indirect recruiting tool to bring them on campus when those kids may not come on their campus for any other reason. So you kind of try to create that value for the college about bringing those kind of events in. Instead, of course, we all would love the NCAA and NAIA events and all that, but just encourage to look to the high school events too, because all of a sudden we got some traction on that, and the relationships have just blossomed in the last year or so when we started doing that. So.
Good.
We actually have a South Alabama professor on our board. And we also found, to your point, Troy University, which is a Division I mid-major in the same conference, is one of our biggest sponsors, but it's their admissions department, because there are a lot of people from Pensacola that go that 2-hour drive to get away from mom and dad just far enough and go to Troy. So we reach out a little bit too.
So when I worked with Duke, we'll pull back. So when I was working with Duke, we quickly realized, and I went into our facilities meeting and just said, hey, I know exactly who the sacred cow is of this complex, and we are not to touch Cameron unless it is the be-all, end-all ask of everything. So I think also like that opened a door because he realized that I understood like the big side of this of, hey, we get requests for Cameron all the time, and at the end of the day, Coach K's up in his tower watching everything that happens in this facility. So we were very hesitant on what we asked for. We never went that direction. But to your point, we realized too that football and Coach Cutcliffe was trying to bring up that side of the program. So we were talking about Pop Warner. How can we showcase the football stadium that had just gone through? You talked about NIL, and I think it would be interesting kind of combining the concept of like how do you bring in the high school sports, but how do you partner in with your local businesses that could potentially, if they're going to recruit out of that event, potentially provide value at an NIL level for a senior that's now being pulled into the athletic department and could potentially be earning money their freshman year.
Ray, would you mind getting a quick head count too, just before we wrap up? Yeah, if you don't mind. Can you count that high? Yeah.
I'm Jessica from Oxford and Ole Miss, and we were talking about student engagement from the admission side, and then also from just who we are as like from a CVB. We actually had 2 interns this summer that worked through our athletic social engagement office. So they have a program specifically for interns to work with nonprofits or kind of not the businesses that you would normally think of, you know, the bankers and the lawyers, but you know, they were working with the Boys and Girls Club and the Parks and Rec in our office, and we had 2. We had a volleyball player and a football player. And then at the end of their summer term, they had to make a presentation. So they were able to showcase kind of who we were, and there were a lot of people a lot of those students at that event that were like, oh, that's where you go for something like that. So just creating that awareness and giving them the opportunity to kind of dig into what we do was awesome, and being able to showcase that. And then from the admissions side, we take part in every orientation session to meet with the parents. So this past summer, I think there were 20 sessions every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which was a lot for our staff. But to be able to have the conversations with those parents and then also take away like the stigma of, for us, we have about 1,300 hotel rooms. And so, you know, the misconceived notion is everything is sold out, in June. Well, it's not. You just have to know who to call and how to make that process work. So being able to be in front of them and communicate that as opposed to what they've heard, down the street, was very beneficial for us to give them a person of contact. And when you shake that mama's hand, especially if they're from out of state and have no idea where their kid is going, quite frankly, of they were friends with Johnny and they said come, so they did, takes it next level to be able for you to connect with them on that sense. And we've seen great success from that.
Yeah, and your first part, too, of that story as well, I think a lot of us speak to our colleges and to the classes. If you've got a sport business minor program, or if you just have, a future leader in sport type program, or whatever that may be, and you go and you sit down and you talk to them, and their eyes open up and they realize there's a whole industry of sport they never even thought about. Everybody wants to be the next athletic director or nobody wants to be the president of the Lions, Detroit Lions, but maybe you want to be president of an NFL team that wins games once in a while. But they never consider the amateur scope of things and how large that industry is, and working for an NGB or for a destination creating events or an event owner or rights holder. So when the light bulb goes off, and all of a sudden now you've got a classroom of volunteers that are ready to activate and get out and network in your community. To your point,
Yeah, I think in Knoxville, we're fortunate to have some connections with the athletic department, but I think you got to look at, don't bid on stuff that the university's not interested in hosting. And if you try to bid on something and the AD, it all goes with the AD. If the AD says, I don't want to host, for years our AD didn't want to host TWSAA football in the stadium. Then our last AD was like, hey, I want to bid on it. So I think when you have changes in leadership, if there's something you've been looking at and you wanted to do, if you had changes in leadership, try it again, because they could change. And then I think the part about who to start with, at the end of the day, if there's an event management department, that department's going to get stuck with your event. So if you can get them on your side, and sometimes that's hard because they have to work more, but if you can get them on your side, it usually helps in getting this stuff going, because they're the one that's going to know, hey, this is how much this event's going to cost, this is what it's going to bring to the university. So I would start some with them if you can. And usually it's the facility department, but sometimes it's separate.
That's good.
So I just want to go back to the high school events at the campuses and stuff. We created our own high school events. We do a basketball and a girls basketball and a volleyball event. And what we did is we go, this is Sammy, she's the ringleader of all this, but she goes and she talks with the coaches, and we ask them, what teams do you want us to go invite to this tournament? So we get them involved with it, and then they're like, oh, well, we can do a coaches clinic, or we can do these other things, and they start getting excited about it. So then we have access to maybe get to their facilities if we need to, or if not, that they have the teams that they want in the community, because they're recruiting these kids anyway, so we're trying to bring them in. And like a big win for us was with the track and field coach, because he is hard-nosed and he did not want anybody in his facilities ever, and he's finally started saying yes to events, because now he's hello, I can get these are people we're recruiting, I can get them in here. So it's we're kind of going on all ends here to hit the coaches, get them engaged, get them excited about it, and then we're able to get people in. And then just kind of going back to what you were just saying, and I just lost. Never mind. I lost my train.
That's what I think.
It derailed.
Ray, Joel's got one up here too, and while you get your exercise in, Ray, I appreciate you running the mic around. I was sitting in the women's leadership event the other day. Linda and Gray put together and organized, and was sitting there. And one of the things that came to my mind is we've got the 50th anniversary of Title IX coming up June 22nd. Was that the right date? 23rd. June 23rd. And we have an opportunity as we're all connected in our college towns to maybe have some conversations about how can we do events or things that have national impact and visibility across our markets, and leverage each other in each individual communities to do something in our own communities, but is similar across the country. And when I was sitting there, I was texting with some of our business leaders back in my home city and said, hey, 50th anniversary of Title IX's coming up. We've got to figure out what we're going to do. And it never would have dawned on me had you guys not done the session. But there's an opportunity there for maybe all of us to steal both of your ideas, to leverage that in each of our communities. But I think that's just a small example of things that we can look at doing across our markets that may help rise everything we're all doing.
And Mike, can I speak on that?
Yeah, please do.
Microphone, just this real quick. I reached out actually to our athletic department, our marketing director at our athletic department at East Carolina University. And this is so sad, but he had no idea that it was the 50th be at the anniversary of Title IX either. So just at least reaching out to them and letting them know, hey, this is coming up, because they have an opportunity to do some advertising and marketing as well.
Yeah, just I'm sitting here and I'm hearing everybody talking, and my brain's kind of going about our relationships within our universities that we have and stuff like that. And I realize is that on a monthly basis, I'm dealing with coaches, athletic directors. I'm dealing with admissions. I'm dealing with the club sports guys. I'm dealing with the intramural people, but I'm dealing with all those people individually and like in a silo. And so I know they're not going and talking to each other necessarily about, hey, you're doing this, or, this is a great we provide great volunteer opportunities for your students, or we have a sports management program. We're constantly having interns and stuff. Like, we provide such a value to the university, and I think we get overlooked because we don't tell our story to the university well enough and show our value. So I would love to have a generic topic of like best practices of how we as an industry are speaking to the leadership of these universities and showing our worth to get the buy-in from the top all the way down. Because I'm sure if the dean of students or the provost or the president knew as I'm going through this how big of an impact we actually have on a university, even with 50,000 students like Florida State, they would probably be impressed. And it's just, I know that's a boat we've missed. And so just to hear how everybody else has told that story, if they have, to their universities, would be good.
Yeah, that's good. Right here, yeah, we got. And as we go around too, shout out topics as well. I've got a good list of already about 8 or 9 of them that we've kind of talked about, but anything comes to mind, we'll jot it down.
Volunteer pools. Yeah, and that's actually I have an idea for a topic. I don't know how a lot of people feel about this in this room, but there's we're talking about broad spectrum of things and maybe engaging the rest of the membership that maybe don't have universities, but have the opportunity to reach out to nearby or surrounding cities. I know for when I was in Chicago Southland, none of my universities wanted to bid on events. So I went to the next state, to Valparaiso University, and partnered with them on bringing events to Chicago Southland because they didn't have the buy-in from, and I'm sorry if anyone's from Valpo in here, but didn't have the buy-in from the CVB there. They also didn't have facilities. So it was a good partnership, and I know Tampa's a great example. They hosted the Frozen Four. They did it with the University of Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Unique aspect, and again, not trying to say, go ahead and pick the pocket of your nearby sports commissioner, CVB, but I think those relationships can be built in Tulsa, where I'm at now. Even though we have University of Tulsa, Oral Roberts, we actually do more with Oklahoma State University, which is in Stillwater. It's about 45 minutes to an hour and 20 away from us, and so believe it or not, again, they, and same thing with Valparaiso, we found out that a majority of their alumni were from Chicago Southland. Same thing with Oklahoma State. A majority of their alumni are in Tulsa, not in Oklahoma City, so the partnership makes sense for them to continue to market and host events in those cities that have a huge alumni base and can market to future students.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Joel, because not every college or university has the same programs either, right? So you might have a facility that is a match for that event. We did the same thing. We don't have any schools with shooting sports. We have one coming online now, but we have a great shooting facility. And the schools in Ohio, vice versa, didn't have the right shooting facilities, but they had the programs they wanted to promote. So yeah, it's a great point.
And actually, to piggyback on that point, we are hosting a D2 men's golf regional in 2022. And we don't have D2 in our city, but we have golf, and we host NCAA events there. And we actually not even reached out to a school, but we reached out to the California Collegiate Athletic Association, and they were our bid partner. So it's not even a school; it's actually a conference that allowed us to partner. Now they don't have any staff, so that's going to help with the event. But all we needed was the partner to have it hosted in our city. So just to piggyback on that. But I think the other thing that we add to the conversation that I don't think a lot of universities know, or I think they take a lot of things for granted, is we focus on experience. And we hosted the men's water polo nationals in the end of 2019. And Stanford has that quite often. And Stanford has a full-time staff. They don't talk to any DMO. They don't talk to anybody. They just do what they do. But they just do it in such a way that when we hosted it, there was definitely the committee members and all the coaches really noticed, because we had better food, we had better signage. Our hotels had welcome banners in the hotels. We wrapped elevators. We focused on welcoming student athletes, welcoming the teams, being thankful. And actually, committee members went out to dinner in the city and were thanked for being in town. That doesn't happen in Stanford, and so I think we definitely have a value to our universities that I think that a lot of them just take for granted because they're hosting so many events that they don't get it. But we can elevate that, I think, through that conversation. So
Agreed. I think one of the things that's really changed is, the previous NCAA bid cycles, you were required, the university really had to drive that, right? And I think once they opened that up to destinations to be able to drive that, I think it really changed the opportunity, one, for not only us to engage, but to take a little pressure off the colleges and universities to say, hey, we can lead this end of things. Just let us do this part, and we'll let you know how we partner to move this forward. And I see Russ in the back. I don't know this factually. I assume it based on what I've seen across our country as that process has changed. But it seems like it's been easier to get some of these championships out into communities as well that way, because now your community goes, hey, I'm good at hosting this. I can host it and find the right partner school or conference versus just relying on the schools to find it, host it, and figure out if they want to do it or not. So has that shifted a little bit, Russ, in your opinion, in your view?
Yeah, no, I think so. Let's go back 30 years.
I'll get Russ a mic. Since this is being recorded, so thanks. I'm putting in my personal collection.
Our relationship with University of West Florida would not be the same without this guy.
Wow. No, I think it absolutely has. As sports commissions have evolved, the NCAA has become more willing to let you guys drive it, right? Back in the day, it was sort of a membership thing. Hey, Michigan State, go ahead and host that for us. And I think they now see the benefit, and especially at the equities, right? The Frozen Fours of the world. A single school really can't take things like that on, but they're open, and I think my role with them and attending shows and things like that, it just continues to strengthen that. The symposium that we held at the NCAA national office to kind of kick off the bid cycle, we blew people away. I mean, the building was packed. Other departments were like, "What's all the noise?" But that was good for us. So yeah, that's going to continue and hopefully into the next cycle and even beyond.
Good, thank you, Linda, and then Gray.
Morning, guys. Jonathan from Rhode Island. We have a large presence of college and universities in a very close-knit area in Providence, and without them, we would really struggle. So I would say, and to piggyback off Joel, I believe's point in showing the value, with our post-event reporting, we not only send it to the client, we send it to the universities as well to really show them, hey, this is the impact in the community. With a caveat, I would say, caution what you send out, because sometimes they say, oh, you're getting this much, I need to bump up my rental. And then the second part is for the smaller universities, we're using our Threshold 360 relationship with them and getting captures of all their facilities. And a lot of the smaller guys that didn't have those cool tours and the pictures, they're really liking that because some of the larger universities are already going to have it. And actually the young professionals group we did, it was Tuscaloosa and Baton Rouge. And I think the conversation, what you were asking is, should we keep it broad or should we go into the nitty-gritty? I think broad is the answer because, as we've learned today, it's such a wide range of availability and relationships. So that's my point of view.
Lyndon Gray.
Just hold it between the two of you.
I think not only was it probably good for the NCAA, but it was good for our individual communities because we had to become more strategic. Before the bids would come out, you didn't know when they were coming. So we went from being transactional to really being strategic. Yeah. And I think it was really good for our community to work with Division I, II, and III schools as well, and just kept building on those relationships. And I just also wanted to add that I think getting to know the individual coaches is really key because in our community, we've had some coaches that have been there for a long time and some that are new to the community as well. But I think they understand our value, of whether it's the volleyball coach that can help us with USA Volleyball or the same with our fencing coach at Ohio State. He might help us with the camp. And those relationships go a long way then when you're reaching out to the NGBs as well. So, and then getting to know who's on the different committees. So we have at Ohio State, there's several administrators that might be on the volleyball committee or a coach that might also be very influential. So just pinpointing those champions that can go be a partner with you.
And that's a great point. And Linda, Linda and I were on a panel at DI earlier this year. And Linda brought up a great point as well on the panel that the coaches can be your biggest advocates, right? In some cases, because they know if they've got a strong recruiting class coming through and they want more exposure, or they need more exposure to grow a recruiting class. And the same things happen in our college. Our women's golf coach, who's been very successful the last almost 20 years, she knows when she's got that class coming up that could really make a good run at things. So she wants to host those regionals at those times when those kids are coming through, little home field advantage, if you will, just to kind of push things through and maybe give them a little bit of an advantage through that process. So she advocates on behalf of us of hosting some of the events that maybe the university wouldn't necessarily look at, but she's pushing it on the backside. So
A good example of that was a few years ago. It was really when Michael Phelps was at the latter part of his career. Ohio State had a chance to host the Grand Prix for USA Swimming, but they had not put any money in their budget for it because it came up within 3 months of hosting. So they asked us, would you take that financial risk? It might have been just $3,000 or something like that, but they felt as their swimming department, they couldn't take that risk. So we did partner with them, had a great event. It actually made a little bit of money and just was great for the community.
My question to Linda was what Russ was speaking about his event. I just was wondering, had she taken anybody from her universities to the bid celebration? And she said yes. So that was just my question. Did you take anyone? So just sharing it with everybody.
I would say for content, something to talk about is the high school all-star issue. We do 8 games in an entire series of high school all-star, but that also, there are some recruiting issues that sometimes do need to be addressed in that process. It's a great thing. Using their facility sometimes is questionable. We have a banquet with all 5 of our events, and who can talk and who can take pictures, and it's not our problem, but we don't want to create a problem for the university, even at the D2. And they're also a good pool. We have a line item in our budget for support of their unexpected regionals of multiple $1,000s.
So I was going to say maybe having a content session around like integrated marketing, especially when you have multiple programs that are within like your purview. I just think about Doreen and everything that you have. Like if 2 of your programs are both hitting NCAAs at the same time, if you share one post from one before the other, it looks like favoritism. So what does it look like to be integrated? Does your own marketing team have the tools and the rights to logos and things like that? That was one of the things that, again, in Durham, Central and Duke made it into the NCAA tournament at the same time. So we went prepared, co-branded on everything that we did. And then it was a conversation around like the city of, hey, let's just share our resources because we were pushing our social, and they weren't, Duke and Central both weren't getting hit with those requests of, hey, can we get your logos? Can we do? We were kind of on their side while they just continued their run. But I think that integrated marketing and what does that look like, again, especially when you have multiple institutions, so you don't look like you're favoriting one over the other.
Okay.
Couple of points. One, also get to know your compliance people at the university, because you need to know what you can and what you can't host on campus. We're hosting a basketball event, and 7th and 8th grade boys can have their non-scholastic event on campus. So we're having that part of that event off campus, but it's not the case for 7th and 8th grade girls, for instance. For basketball, there may be other sports where the rules are different. So make sure you get to know before you say, "Hey, we're going to host a high school all-star event on campus," and find out that that's a violation. Make sure you double check that. I sort of happenstance and trying to host some events on some of our facilities. The pushback that we got was really event management. I used to work in athletics, and so they don't want to throw one more thing on their plate. But one of the things that's happening at Illinois, because we're building a softball practice facility, a baseball practice facility. We also have a lot of requests for weddings at our premium spaces in our football stadium. Is that the university is they're having a separate wing that will be in charge of rentals and outside events. And so when I went to the deputy AD and said, hey, we hear from coaches that want to host events at your facility, but there's this kind of pushback, then that has become a place that we can go to say, hey, they have a separate outside rental person that oversees, and oftentimes they just need somebody that can open the key to the facility, or an IT person, or somebody that knows how to run the video board and such. But the event management people, they don't have to take. In this case, they don't have to really be heavily involved, and so I'm hoping that will open up the door to be able to host some events at some of the college facilities.
Any other comments or questions?
Oh, real quick, it shouldn't have given me the mic. Who wants it? During, to Chad's point and your point, I think we often get frustrated that we can't get the facilities, but one is that they are student athletes of our GA students and stuff who are often operating those. And so challenging them to work and go to class, which was my problem in colleges. And also, the facilities are not built for us. They are built for their students first, and we have to respect that.
Hey, Mike, if you don't already have a topic around college club sports, I would like to see one on that, because a few years ago we hosted the National Collegiate Dodgeball Association Championship, and that was a really fun event. But then, I had an appointment a couple months ago with, National College Table Tennis, and I reached out to VCU, to the club tennis program, and I'm like, hey, do you want to host this event? Crickets. Hey, do you want to partner together and bring this collegiate championship to VCU? We don't have the facilities. We don't want to host. And I'm like, but why not? So, how do you, I want to figure out a strategic way to build those relationships. And I know it's hard because the club presidents of these, club sports, they turn over. So it's maybe getting to whoever oversees all the club sports at your university. I don't know what the answer is, but if anybody has any advice, that would be great.
I think at some of them, too, they have an advisor. They have an advisor that's in that space as well. So while the student president may transfer out, or whatever the case is, each program at Michigan State or Olivet is required to have an advisor that is a staff member be the liaison. Now, sometimes they're engaged. Sometimes they just sign the paperwork and say, yeah, I'm the advisor. Go do whatever you're doing. But that's how we operate.
And we've had ebbs and flows too, but much like you were talking about with having that coaches meeting once a year, we've done that before, where we've brought pizza to the club's directors once or twice a year, just to at least tell them who we are, because they don't know to even reach out to us in most cases.
So we do the same thing, but we actually feed the students. So each year we go and we explain what we do, kind of an education session, and their advisors are using, I guess, the tournaments as their big fundraiser. So we've had a lot of success, and actually the rugby and the lacrosse team have grown into reaching out to NERSA, and they're putting out the bids themselves, and we're just supporting them. So it's kind of an educational process as well.
Yeah, I don't really need to go into what everybody else has already said on there. I mean, we have a fantastic relationship. We just keep calling and emailing. And so if there is turnover, we know pretty soon when there is, and then we immediately ask them for coffee or whatever, just to keep that relationship going. But I think the other thing to remember is it's just never going to be easy. I mean, right, with any nonprofit that we work with, there's going to be turnovers. Who's the next person? And you're dealing with college students. So, and they graduate, they move on, they don't necessarily respond to emails. So I think it's just one of those things where it's definitely the ROI is significant if you can get into it, but just know it's gonna be a lot of work regardless of the relationships that we build.
All right. Well, this is a good conversation. This is a great turnout for 8 a.m., the last day of the conference after the open night. So I really appreciate you guys being here. It's a good time. So what I'm hearing is certainly we have the interest. I definitely think we'll move the community forward and figure out what that looks like. We'll keep it kind of broad in scope to begin with, and figure out how best we navigate it. And the nice thing about these communities are that we lead them and drive them, and it's us that is having the input on topics, direction, and where we want these things to go and what we want them to be. So we have complete control over that. So as you get back and you think more throughout the day, my email address is on the Sports ETA website. Feel free to shoot me an email with any topics that you come up, any information that might come up, anything that you think might be relevant. Our communities have dedicated space on the Sports ETA website. So what we'd end up doing is developing out a colleges page, and we can put any information or content or data that we have as a community on that page, and it can be served as a resource to each of our members that are active in that community. So we'll get moving forward on that. We'll kind of get a list of who those college towns are. If for whatever reason you don't see something in the next month or so come out, feel free to email me or email staff and just say, hey, where are we at with this community? But it'll be posted on the website. An email will be sent out that says how you can activate and start engaging with the community, and we'll get that going. And if anybody has interest in being a part of the leadership group to drive content development, please let me know. I'd love to have 1 or 2 people serving with me to get this up and off the ground to then dive into other resources that are occurring across the country that we might want to promote and share. Any other closing marks? I want to thank Ray for getting all of his steps in the matter of an hour this morning, so thank you, Ray. And I hope you guys all have a very successful last day of symposium, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Be well.